Today is Wednesday, September 30th, 2020. This is the City of Evanston Plan Commission meeting. First order of business is the determination of a quorum. Ms. Jones, if you can call the roll.
Commissioner Halleck.
Here.
Commissioner Hugo.
Here.
Commissioner Johnson.
Here.
Commissioner Linwall.
Here.
Commissioner Westerberg.
Here.
And no, Commissioner Draper is not here. And Chair Isaac.
Here.
All right, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. And then commissioners, we need a motion to suspend the rules and conduct our meeting through Zoom. Do I have such a motion?
I move to suspend the rules and conduct the meeting through Zoom.
All right, Commissioner Halleck. I believe, was it a second from Westerberg?
Yes.
All right. Ms. Jones, if you can call the roll for a vote on the motion.
Commissioner Halleck.
Yes.
Commissioner Hugo.
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson.
Yes.
Commissioner Linwall.
Yes.
Commissioner Westerberg.
Yes.
Chair Isaac.
Yes. Okay. Our next order of business is the approval of the meeting minutes from September 9, 2020. Do any commissioners have any comments, questions, suggested revisions to the proposed minutes? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I move to approve the minutes.
Okay, Commissioner Halleck, is there a second?
I second.
Westerberg seconds. Ms. Jones, if you can call the roll for the vote.
Commissioner Halleck.
Yes.
Commissioner Hugo.
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson.
Yes.
Commissioner Linwall.
Abstain.
Commissioner Westerberg.
Yes.
Chair Isaac.
Yes. All right, the minutes of the September 9th, 2020 meeting are approved. All right, item 4 is old business. There is an A and a B. Both of those matters relate to the to ultimately the same development. A is a subdivision major adjustment to a plan development. That's 19 PLND 0059, and a plan development at 1621 Chicago Avenue, which is 18 PLND 0112. This item has come before us twice before, once quite substantively in February, and then I think it was either earlier than the spring or early summer, came before us again, and we moved it hoping that we would be having meetings in person sometime in the near future. That obviously has not occurred, and so we're moving forward with discussion on this item. Ms. Jones or Mr. Mangum, will one of you be presenting? Someone's on mute. Mr. Mangum?
Yes, I apologize. Yep, I'm on mute, but I do have my screen set up now, and I will be making a brief presentation. As Chair Isaac noted, this item was before the Plan Commission in February. There was a full presentation from staff, from the applicant, questions from the public, comments from the public. So this presentation has been given, so I will go over this quickly. and get to the changes that have been made to the application since this was last before the Plan Commission for that public hearing in February. So there are two items here. They are related. The first is a subdivision and major adjustment. There was a plan development for the extension of the Marion that included the full zoning lot. This is the hashed area you see on your screen here. The applicant now is proposing to develop the northern portion. So as part of this adjustment, they would remove that area from the existing plan development. As a result of that, that increases the floor area ratio by way of reducing the lot size of that existing development. However, there is no physical change proposed to the existing development. This outlines the changes. So the floor area ratio would increase from 3.15 to 4.2. The number of units that were actually constructed were less than what was approved. So that would true up the unit count to 186, where 205 were approved. And then the number of leased parking spaces would be increasing from 32 to 38. However, all would be leased because the on-site spaces would be part of the proposed development parcel as the plan development. So the second request this evening is a plan development at 1621 Chicago Avenue. It does involve several development allowances. It's approximately a half-acre site. This is what the Plan Commission saw in February, this February 2020 Plan Commission. That was a 19-story building at that point with 85 parking spaces. And
Mangum, it's not possible to see your slides, at least on my screen, that you've been going through. Just showing Evanston.
Yeah, we are
page.
stuck at the first page.
Yeah, kind of seem to be stuck on the first page.
Okay. I apologize for that. Let me reshare that. Thank you for pointing that out. Okay, so the current slide showing now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so the difference in what was being shown in February and the current proposed development that's shown here is an FAR of 10.38 with 215 units and 17 stories. And the differences are summed up in the slide here. So mainly the building height was reduced, the number of units reduced, and consequently the floor area ratio was reduced. The number of loading docks were increased from 1 to 2. And the parking remains the same. However, the number of required spaces have been reduced due to the reduced unit count. There's also been some modifications to the first floor plan. The applicant may describe in more detail, but the addition of a second loading dock, reconfiguration of some of the retail space that reduces that space slightly, and a reconfiguration of the proposed porte cochere to expand it to allow for truck turning in that area. So with that, these are the currently proposed site development allowances. 105 feet is allowed as a maximum within the D4 district, plus a site development allowance of 40 feet that may be requested, where the applicant is proposing to exceed that maximum site development allowance with a height of 185 feet. Floor area ratio of 5.4 is allowed with another 0.6 as a site development allowance. And the applicant is proposing 10.38. And the number of dwelling units are proposed at 215, where 54 are allowed. And the number of parking spaces required would be 162 per the previous slide, and 85 are proposed. The applicant is in compliance with the inclusionary housing ordinance that was available at the time the application was submitted in December of 2018, prior to the current inclusionary housing ordinance taking effect January 1st of 2019. The applicant is proposing the following public benefits that they consider public benefits: contribution for improvements of $300,000, promoting local arts, cleaning up environmental on the site where the former dry cleaners was located, electric vehicle charging station, and providing composting and recycling of waste. We went over the plan development standards for development in the previous meeting, and those are available on these slides for review again if needed later on in the meeting. This item was before DAPR, the Design and Project Review Committee. DAPR had a positive recommendation on the first half of the request, that is the subdivision and major adjustment for the previous Marion development. And staff and DAPR is recommending denial of the proposed plan development. There was considerable concern about the extent of the site development allowances being requested, notably the height and floor area ratio and lack of parking, and the lack of public benefits being proposed, in addition to the proposed interruption of the pedestrian environment and sidewalk and two-way protected bike lane facility in front of the project for the curb cut. If the Plan Commission wishes to recommend approval, the following conditions are proposed. The building design that staff and DAPR would continue to work with the applicant on, adoption of construction management plan, additional parking spaces shall be leased from the city and the Church Street garage. Residents would not be eligible for on-street parking permits. That if that access was allowed from Chicago Avenue, then that should be restricted to right out, and that the adjacent alley be reconstructed to support additional traffic. Additionally, that LEED 55 bird-friendly standards are incorporated, and then an easement would be required for the overhang onto the Chicago Avenue right-of-way that's proposed. So that concludes the staff presentation and overview of where we are. Available for questions, and I believe the applicant has a presentation that they will be sharing as well.
My question might be a little premature, but it's a question for staff. In the materials that we got, there are some diagrams about allowable building height. And it says, one of the diagrams says, if they had parking above grade, it wouldn't count in the building height. So therefore they could essentially build the height that they want by zoning if they had parking above grade. So it's in their minds, the height issue is equivalent to that. Could you explain that issue of parking and how that affects the building height?
So correct. In D4 district, there is the ability to subtract out the height of above grade parking for levels that are primarily parking. More than 75% of the gross floor area is parking, and that may be subtracted up to 4 stories or 40 feet. So in this case, they're proposing 2 levels of parking. So if those 2 levels of parking were proposed above ground, the height of those 2 levels could be subtracted. They are proposing 40 feet in excess of the site development allowance. So those 2 levels of parking, would likely not equate to the 40 feet that's being proposed.
Okay. Any other questions for staff at this time, commissioners? Please, Commissioner Johnson.
Mr. Mangum, how many curb cuts are there on that block?
On that block face there, that eastern side of Chicago Avenue, I believe it's just one circular drive that exists for the Marion itself. So there's an inbound and outbound, so it'd be 2 cuts for that one circular drive.
And then this proposal is for I guess that would be a 3rd cut for their additional driveway entrance.
That's correct. It'd be a 2-way proposed curb cut there for the pot cochere and entrance to the subterranean parking.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. With that, let's hear from the applicant. There's some feedback there. This is Jonathan Perman.
Yes, yeah.
Can you turn on your video?
Good evening, Chairman Isaac and members of the commission. I'm Jonathan Perman. For those of you who don't know me, and some of you do, I grew up in Evanston, went to Evanston High School, and served as the head of the Evanston Chamber of Commerce from 1992 to 2010, and so have appeared before this esteemed body on many occasions, so it's good to be back. We will spare you, and we're not going to go through in any way, shape, or form the entire presentation that we did originally, but I think that our main message that we want to impart to you tonight is that we have listened not only to the commission and to the staff, but we've also done a fair amount of outreach to neighbors, to, in particular, the First United Methodist Church, and other stakeholders in order to get their feedback and to try to find areas of common ground. And I'm pleased to say that in a number of instances, we have found that common ground, and we would aim to, if the commission and eventually the city council approve this project, to continue to see the neighborhood and the church and others as stakeholders and as real partners with us as we go forward to try to complete the design and eventually the actual construction of this project. I wanted to, as you all know, this is, from our standpoint, this project is the completion of a vision that Horizon Realty Group has had since 2012, when they bought almost the entire block, starting with the old North Shore Hotel at Davis and Chicago Avenue, and going all the way up to where the PNC Bank is and the Prairie Moon building is. Those two properties we do not own, but everything else. And so as you know, it was always our intent, once the Marion revitalization was completed and the annex was built, to in fact build out the rest of the block. And so this project and what you see here is really the entire vision of that block coming to fruition, at least for us. I wanted to read something, if you permit me, that I thought captures a lot of what you on the Plan Commission and what Evanston is going to be wrestling with, not only now, but over the next several years. In May of 2019, Benjamin Schneider wrote a piece in The Nation magazine, a progressive journal. It's actually the oldest continuously published weekly magazine in the US, making the case for increasing density in America's cities as a crucial part of progressive city planning. In the article, he suggested that policies that support reduced fossil fuel consumption, increased economic mobility, and creating more affordable housing would be strategies a place like Evanston would tend to support. But that if those policies included zoning or rezoning apartment buildings near expensive and large single-family homes, many would balk about the parking, about the traffic, about blocked views and other urban ills. And quite frankly, we've gotten a little bit of that pushback. But we believe that Evanston is better than that, and that this community should embrace apartment buildings and density in the downtown, and we should welcome new residents to be part of the solution in our society's challenges. So we would agree with Schneider, who says that, quote, the most effective thing that any city can do to combat climate change, not to mention improving safety and public health, something that's high on our minds right now, is to get more people to walk, to bike, and to take public transportation. And that means more people need to live in places where those options are available, unquote, like downtown Evanston. Another thing that I want to point out is that we are a completely self-financed project. We are not dependent on the vagaries of the banking system to finance and to get the flow of capital going in order to make this project happen. And I would suggest that in that respect, we're a rare developer, particularly in these times, in that we are willing to put our money where our mouth is and really go forward despite the economic conditions of the United States and the world, and build this project, which we think will be of great benefit and great enhancement to the city of Evanston on a number of levels, not the least of which is the financial benefits. As I said, we listened and we made changes based on those constructive criticisms that we received both at the Plan Commission back in May and throughout the summer as we met with various stakeholders. And so I'd like to point out a couple notes and then turn it over to Tim Kent from Papa George Hames, who will talk in a little more detail about some of the physical changes that we have made, and quite frankly, some of the ongoing discussions that we continue to have with stakeholders. One of the criticisms that we received was that there are not enough, in the minds of some, public benefits, or at least those public benefits do not equate somehow to the amount of allowance that we are asking for, although there is no formalized, quantitative method in order to calculate what is enough public benefit for what one is asking for. But the truth is, if you go back over the last several major projects that have been done in Evanston, there is no developer that even comes close to what we are offering in terms of cash benefit. Yes, there are a number of infrastructure improvements that both we and others have made, but those don't appear to be quantifiable. At least there's no public record for them that we could find. But in terms of actual cash going to projects that has been identified, we are significantly above, whether it's the Albion, whether it's the Link, whether it's a number of other, the two senior projects, senior citizen projects that are being done in the northwest corner of downtown Evanston, $300,000 that we're proposing, or 1/2 of 1% of the construction cost, is very significant. With that, I'd like to turn it to Tim Kent, who will talk about some specifics in terms of changes that we have made. Scott, can you give us the shared screen?
You should have access to share your screen.
And Mr. Kent, and anyone else that's going to be speaking tonight, if you wouldn't mind, if you're available to turn on your video while I'm speaking.
Sorry.
Thank you, sir.
Hi. And do I have screen sharing yet?
Yeah, you should be able to just select share screen, probably at the bottom of the Zoom.
One second. I apologize. I'm going to have to, it's telling me I have to quit the Zoom app and relaunch it in order to share my screen. So bear with me. It'll just take a few seconds.
Okay.
He doesn't have the...
Scott, you're checking to let him in if he when he asks.
I've admitted him back into the meeting, Mr. Kent.
Okay. Can everyone see that and hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Great. Okay, thanks, Jonathan. Thanks, everyone. And I'm going to skip over a lot of the things that we discussed previously with this project. And let me click forward several slides in the presentation. Just very quickly, a reminder to everyone where it is. I think we all know where it is, but it's between Davis and Church on the east side of Chicago Avenue. It's a mid-block site. And this is a slightly different angle of the site, looking from the northwest to the southeast. And we see that mid-block condition. It's exactly a half an acre in size. And the existing Marion is here just to the upper right of that site. This is the site plan. This shows the block. We see again in plan the building mid-block. The Marion is to the right. In this case, north is roughly to the left. Whole Foods is down on the lower left. And we see multiple curb cuts on the west side of the street on Chicago Avenue. We see the bike lane traversing the block on the east side of the street on Chicago Avenue. And the entrance to the porte cochere and the below grade parking is mid-block there as well. And there will be a continuation of the retail facade all the way across. That hasn't changed. None of this has really changed. This is a view looking over the skyline of downtown Evanston, and we see Chicago in the far background. And here in the center left is the way the building would appear if the building were built. So it's a very slight addition to that area, and we'll have multiple views that we go through. You can see also the effect of it having been made a couple of stories shorter. And here it is again. Architecturally, there really are no changes. It's the same style, the same detailing, the same character, the same vocabulary, but it is 2 stories shorter, as was mentioned. And the biggest change architecturally is that we've changed the color from a reddish brick color to something that's stone-like. And that was something that we have been considering for a long time. It was also mentioned by Commissioner Halleck during the Plan Commission hearing back in February. It was a suggestion, and it was one that we liked and took to heart. And it does, we believe that it reduces the apparent mass of the building on the street wall. But we had done several studies of this over the previous months before that. The ground plane is the same as before, very activated with potentially a restaurant use, very much in keeping with the pedestrian nature and character of downtown Evanston here. This is a view from the north. And from a little further away, we see Park Evanston across the street. I want to talk just very briefly about the first floor plan. The changes are quite minimal to what we proposed before. One change is at the alley. We've added a loading berth shown here so that we now have 2. And we've also made it possible for delivery vehicles such as FedEx or UPS to enter the porte cochere and get out of the street and not have to double park in the street by providing some turnaround space for those vehicles. There are some slight changes in the internal operation of the first floor, but it's generally the same as it was before. And the retail is virtually identical in size. It's just ever so slightly smaller than what was proposed back in February. The rest of the floor plans are unchanged from before, and I won't go through those. And then this is the below grade parking, also unchanged from before. And this is a view from the east, looking back across to the west to showing again from a different perspective how the building would sit within the downtown Evanston skyline. And then I'll skip over a few more slides here that we talked about before. And I did want to touch on the question that was raised earlier about the zoning envelope for the project. This is the site. This is the base as of right allowable, a height of 105 feet, and that's how this would appear as a mass. With development allowance, it could go up to 145 feet. But as was discussed, with above ground parking, that up to 4 stories of that would not be counted towards the height. So within the normal development allowances, a building of 185 feet could be built here. And the city staff will remember that the original proposal for this project back in 2017 that was discussed with the staff, we had a much taller building and we had all of the parking above grade, and we had 4 stories of parking at that time. So the height of the building that we're asking for is identical to that, 185 feet. The difference is that we're not, if I go back 1 slide, we're not putting any of the parking on the facade of the building, which would be architecturally, we think, a negative. It would create a blank space within the facade. It would be a deactivated zone. But with, sorry, let me go forward. But within that same 185 feet that we could be allowed, where by not putting the parking above ground, but by putting it below ground, we can create a fully activated facade that's all residential. We're only putting 2 levels of parking below grade because it's expensive to put the parking below grade. And we're limiting to 2 levels here. So if we were forced to put all the parking above grade, we probably would have more parking. But we wanted to make that point that we're really not asking for an extraordinary amount of height here under what would normally be allowed if we had parking above grade. So this shows that comparison. I don't really have anything else to add here. I think that's the extent of our presentation. Jonathan, did you have anything more to talk about?
No.
Okay, commissioners, do you have any questions for the applicant before we open it up to questions from the public?
Yes, I have a number.
Please.
First, I guess for the architect, I noticed that there's a 12-inch overhang that for the residential windows that will require an easement. Can you explain why that's necessary? And then I guess a follow-up, what happens in the winter? Is that going to be an issue with falling ice for pedestrians?
Thanks for the question. Let me get back to a slide that would show that condition. A few more clicks, I apologize. I think this image, let me go back one more. So what you're referring to are these bay windows, which project 12 inches out from the face of the building. This is an articulation of the facade that we think is an enhancement. It's architecturally very similar to what's going on with the building that's just to the north on Chicago Avenue. And it's an enhancement to the interior space, and we think it enlivens the facade and gives it some strength. It creates a vertical line on the facade, and we're trying to emphasize those vertical lines. So architecturally speaking, we think it's an enhancement to the overall design of the front elevation, and there's a similar detail on the back of the building, but without the projected portion. We don't see this as being something that will create an ice problem, or large icicles or anything coming off that. The canopies that are along the sidewalk that would be in use by retail would be further out than that. So we don't see ice or ice accumulation as being an issue.
Okay, thank you. And then I guess this is probably for the owner. I'd like a little more explanation about how the valet parking system would work. Is this something that's available to residents 24/7? Will residents be able to park their own vehicles? So that's kind of, I'd like to understand that, kind of how residents will access parking.
The valet is going to be 18 hours.
The valet will be available 18 hours a day, I'm being told. And residents would also be able to self-park, is that correct? And residents would also be able to self-park in the garage.
Okay, and then kind of as a follow-up, one of the benefits you're proposing is the electric charging station. Would that be limited to, and it says that it's for the public, how would the public where would the charging station be located, and how would the public access it?
It's going to be in a valet.
Just 1 second, please. So the way the electric charging stations would work is that they would be available for public use, and the valet for free, and the valet would take the car down and plug that car in down in the garage.
Okay, moving along to my questions. I apologize to everyone, but I was not on the commission in February, or I would have asked the questions then. With respect to, I guess this is kind of traffic related. There are what kinds of conflicts can we anticipate with respect to the Whole Foods left turns in and out of the Whole Foods lot with the access to the Marion Legacy immediately opposite? And I can kind of see conflicting left turn issues, and kind of how will that be addressed? And then I guess kind of as a follow-up for the traffic, I know your study was done, looking at AM and PM peaks, which is, typical, but with respect to a grocery store versus the residential projects that's targeted to seniors, are those turns in and out going to be concentrated during the peak hour, or are they going to be spread out more during the day? I hope I'm asking this question that it makes sense.
What I'd like to do is turn this over to Michael Worthman, who's our consulting traffic engineer. He's on the call.
I'm here, Tim.
Oh, great.
Good evening. My name's Michael Worthman with KLOA, principal with the firm. We conducted the traffic study for the proposed development. Excellent question, Commissioner. It should be noted right now that there is no left turns from the Whole Foods parking lot. It's a right turn only. Left turns out of there are prohibited. Our traffic count showed that the majority of the people are following that prohibition. And similar, talking with Evanston staff and so forth, we would restrict our access drive to right turn out only too. So we would minimize those left turn conflicts that you were talking about.
Okay, but there still will be left turns allowed into both of those.
Correct. And there is a center median, stripe median, where the cars can pull out of the through lane and wait to make their left turns. They will not conflict because they will be aligned opposite each other, the access drive. So it will be like any intersection where you have left turns occurring at the same time.
Okay, will it conflict with the bike lane?
Well, our access drive will cross the bike lane.
Right, no, I understand, but
Yeah.
in terms of having to, I guess if you're making the left turn in, it wouldn't necessarily impact. Okay, and then I think.
Commissioner.
Commissioner
Lenoir. We've had some discussions with city staff about not permitting left turns in or out of the porte cochere. So if you're coming from the north, for example, a left turn into the porte cochere would be prohibited, only a right turn. So if the city staff wants us to do that, we're fine. It's not, that hasn't been specifically part of our plan, but if it is if it's the preference of the city staff to not allow either entry or exit with a left turn in and out of the porte cochere, we'll certainly accept that.
Muted.
Jeannie, you're muted.
Muted.
All right, sorry. And then I think my final question has to do with how construction would be handled, given the presence of the protected bike lane or the barrier separated bike lane and the alley that's pretty busy. You know, how are you going to build this?
Well, I believe there would have to be a construction plan that would be submitted to the city and approved by the city. This is in a preliminary state right now in terms of the construction timeline and the details of the construction process. But we would work closely with the city to ensure that disruption would be minimized, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not an unusual condition here at all. So it's fairly normal.
Okay, and I think I'm sorry, I have one last question, and then I'll be quiet. And that really is with the proposed drive and the porte cochere that is going to involve the loss of 3 city public parking spaces. Is are you planning on compensating the city for lost revenue with respect to those parking spaces?
I think, yeah, we would.
Texas.
Yeah.
No.
That's all I have for now.
I've got a couple of questions. One of them is on the entry to the entry and exit from the porte cochere. Are you providing any additional safety features or special paving or sound alarms or anything like that for additional safety?
Yes, we are, and we have a preliminary plan of that. Let me just find that drawing. So we would be providing, first of all, there's a site clearance triangle that would ensure that there's good visibility all around the intersection. It would be raising the the bike lane slightly to ensure that bicyclists know to slow down at that point, and also for vehicles coming in and out. There would be additional signage, there would be lights. There are multiple things that we've considered for this, and we want this to really be the safest intersection, bicycle intersection along this entire bike route. So Jonathan's going to say something too.
Wait, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hear me now?
Here says you're muted.
There. So, Commissioner Linwald, I know you haven't had the benefit of seeing this, but we did a complete tour last summer of 19, of the entire cycle track from Davis Street all the way up to the Wilmette border. There are more than 20 curb cuts along that cycle track, including 6 on the Northwestern campus, 2 downtown at the Marion, and 12 north of the Northwestern campus. I realize that this is an award-winning cycle track, but I got to tell you, and we were all almost shocked at the lack of safety warning signage, particularly as you go north from downtown at each of those curb cuts. And so the bar is pretty low, and it is our intention, as Tim said, to make this much different in terms of safety and warning enhancements than what people see typically on this cycle track, because it's really, in our view, does not really offer the warning systems that it should.
I have another question, and I don't know if this is typically done for Evanston businesses, but a lot of the community comments, resident comments, were about we're getting rid of these businesses that are on that block, and some of them are pretty popular. Are you going to help these businesses relocate, or is there anything financially or programmatically to assist them in moving somewhere else? I mean, there's plenty of empty storefronts in Evanston, so I think the opportunities are there, but there's a financial cost.
You're on mute, Mr. Perman.
Can you guys, this is Jeff Michael speaking. Can you hear me? I'm with Horizon Realty Group. So to address that question that was raised regarding the current tenants there, currently there is only one tenant's found restaurant, or 2 actually, BC Cleaners, that are really viable. The other is due to a myriad of reasons, including mostly, COVID situation, are pretty much on life support that's been given by us. And I'm not hopeful that they're even going to last through the COVID situation. So we're talking about 2 tenants there at most. One's the restaurant found, and I don't want to get into particulars of her financial situation, but I would say I don't think they're very strong, given discussions that we've had. And we've entertained talks with her about locating into the new space that's still on the table, and we'd like to keep her around if that's possible. We just don't know the viability of her business absent of what's going on with this development. So unfortunately, there's not much to salvage in the existing commercial strip center that's there right now.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Michael. Commissioner Halleck, do you have another question?
No.
Okay. Any other questions from commissioners?
Can we go back to the slide that showed the height again one more time? And I just want to make sure I understand. As of right, you are allowed 105 feet, correct? And with allowances, you could get to 145. But if you don't have allowances, you're at 105. And then is the 4 level of parking added to that 105 if you had no allowances? So you'd have 40 feet of parking, let's say, plus 105 of building height. That would be without allowances.
Commissioner Westerberg, I would suggest that we ask Mr. Mangum to weigh in on that.
All right.
Yes, thank you. That's a good question. Essentially, that's correct. That the additional or the height for the floors that counted towards parking would be subtracted from the zoning height of the building.
Thank you.
Any more questions, Commissioner Westerberg?
Is this, excuse me, I just have a follow-up on this issue. Is this type of thing, the fact that we don't count parking in height, is that particular to this zoning or, you know, all of the downtown zonings?
I believe that's in all the downtown districts. Double check that.
So if a person, if a building wanted to provide, I mean, maybe I'm being absurd, but 8 stories of parking plus the allowable space above, that would be okay, and it would just raise the allowable height of the building by that many stories.
It's actually limited to a maximum of 4 stories or 40 feet, whichever is less.
Okay.
Well, I have a question to follow up on this, and Mr. Kent, if you can move on to, I believe it's slide 40 in your list.
Yeah, and just while you're advancing that applies to the D2, D3, and D4 zoning districts, but not the D1 district.
Okay, so as of right, 105 stories, and and then I'm sorry, with allowances 145, and then you can get up to 185 with the parking above grade, and what you're proposing is 185. So my question to you is, if you were to do option 3, how would that change the number of residential floors and the unit count and, you know, roughly the FAR?
I would have to calculate all that.
You'd have less of pretty much everything.
But the FAR would be, I'm being told, 6.7 approximately. But we would lose 4 levels of apartments, so the number of units would go down by approximately, roughly 50 units or so.
Okay. All right. Any other questions from the commissioners? Otherwise, we'll open it up to questions from the public. All right. So I have a list of people that have signed up beforehand, and then I will open it up to people that have not signed up previously. And what I will say right now is that this is the time to ask questions of staff or the applicant. They should not be rhetorical or combative in nature. You should be merely looking to elicit facts and information from the applicant and or staff. So with that, the first person on my list is a Matt Feldman. Mr. Feldman?
So mine is actually a comment, not a question. Should I wait?
Yes, please. Yeah, there's going to be a section for comments, and I will go down through the same list that I'm going through now. So you'll be the first on the list for comments.
Thank you.
Next on my list is a Dennis and Jacqueline Harder.
I also have a comment, which I will give later.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. Just lost my list. Linda Del Bosque.
Hi, good evening. First, my question is for the city. So Scott, what is the need for senior living? The last like year and a half, we have more senior living in Evanston. Is there a need for that, for the Marion to extend to the legacy, to the Marion legacy? And then we have others. Is there a need that I'm not seeing, Scott? I mean, what is the city? That was my first question. And then my second question is for the Marion legacy. Is there going to be any type of level of care, or is it all going to be active senior living? So.
All right. So Scott, is that a,
So, yeah.
yeah, Scott, is that a question that you have the ability to answer? I'm not sure that Mr.
We're just seeing, yeah, we're just seeing a continued, the next couple of meetings with plan meeting is all wrapped around senior living. So I just have a question that can be answered outside of this meeting. That's fine. But as far as the developers or the Marion legacy, is there going to be any type of level of care, or is it all going to be active senior living?
Okay, that's a question for
So all of it will be independent living.
Okay, so
but aging in place, and our vision for this is that the Marion legacy is a conduit or a bridge to get people who are ready for it into more assisted living as they progress through their age.
So
at the Marion.
Okay,
I would also say that the city's own commission study by consultant Sawgrass confirmed a significant demand for senior living and reaffirms that Evanston will need to generate supply in the coming year to accommodate the growth not only from Evanston, but from the surrounding region. And that takes into account the two big projects that are under construction in the northwest corner of downtown. So of any demographic, Evanston is and will continue to see for many years out a significant demand for senior living. Part of that is just the aging of our own United States of America population.
I understand coming from Texas.
And according to we would be putting up the capital if we for a building aimed at seniors, if we didn't think not just today but much further out there would be a demand.
Mr. Perman, can I speak, please? Thank you. Coming from Texas, I'm very much familiar working in the case management, transitional care, and precision hospitalist. I understand senior living in the back of my hand. So what I'm wanting to see is if we're finalizing the senior tsunami ending at 2027, 2057, we still need a level of care. So if to see the Marion legacy to extend, would you actually go into a CCRC? Would you look into that versus going into active senior living? Because if we're having an active senior living, don't you think that too many active senior living within a 1 mile radius is too much between the Avador, the condominiums that are being built? We have the Mather, and then possibly the Cook Authority housing. So even though they're economically, they're sustainably different, there's no CCRC for Evanston residents to grow old in or age in place. And assisted living can only provide a level of care. But if you push into the CCRC, then you're able to cohesively go into memory care and rehabilitative care as well, which we don't have except for the Aprion. So I would like to see it be modified. If you're looking into going into bringing in the parking and whatnot for our community, I would like to see this modified into more of a CCRC versus just adult senior living.
Well, Linda, that with all due respect, that is not our business model, nor really our business experience. We don't do CRCs.
I get it.
Perhaps there are others out there that would look at Evanston as a good foundation for investing in one, but
we have a
ours
lot of
is
adult
focused
children
on independent
here.
living.
We have a lot of adult children here, and we also have a lot of, that would like to keep their senior parents here and age in place. If you're looking to book within the city, because we know that seniors have a fixed budget. So if we look at a college city, which we are, and we're having all these senior people living here, that doesn't mean they have a robust retirement fund. Okay.
No, totally agree with you. It's just,
So there you
that
go.
that's not our,
Right.
that's not our business. That's
I
not what we
get
do.
it.
And we can't suddenly convert to go into the CCRC business.
Oh, no, I totally get it. I know who y'all are. I know your office in Chicago. You have paid advertising with me. I know exactly who you are. I'm just saying that we really need to look at it as a community, as a city. If we're really looking for more sustainable, that's the thing we go think. Thank you for your time, Mr.
Another
Farmer.
question? Do you have another question?
Nope, that was not it. I was finishing what I was saying, Mr. Isaac. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Delbosque. All right, William Brown from the First United Methodist Church.
No questions, Chairman, but comments.
Okay, thank you, sir. Bob Froscher. Mr. Froscher, I saw you on here earlier. Just take yourself off.
Yeah.
There we go. All right.
Turn on my video right now, so just hold on. There we go. I'll have a comment later, but just two quick questions for either Tim or John. One is whether you guys considered a change in zoning for this development. It was clear in the February 26th session that the commissioners, I won't say as a group, but at least a couple or three felt that a building of this variance in both height and FAR really should be a zoning change. So that's my first question. And my second question is whether you had a chance to read all of the comments. I know some were applied late, but there's a total between the two dates of 46, 45 of which are in opposition. And so I'd like to understand how you believe you've resolved or addressed many of the concerns raised by residents who live in this area. Those are just the written comments, by the way.
Okay, so the one question is, did the applicant read the public comments? And I'm sorry, what was your first question, Mr. Froscher?
Whether they considered a zoning change.
Whether they considered a zoning change, that's right. Okay, so
I think heavily discussed back in February as the appropriate approach here.
Okay, so Mr. Perman?
So not only, I'll answer the second question first, and then I'm going to have our counsel answer the first question. With respect to the question of whether we read the public comments, not only did we read and analyze and think a lot about those comments, but we arranged meetings with a number of those people who made the comments so that we could further engage them in conversation. I know, Mr. Fletcher, that you weren't available for the date that we had set, and I'm sorry about that, but we did have, I think, some productive discussions with a number of other residents. So yes, indeed, we thought about them and we take them very seriously.
Hi, this is David Meek, counsel to the applicant. With respect to the question of the zoning change, I do recall that we did take that under serious consideration, and we felt that a change to say the only I think potential change that would have allowed for this height as a right or through a different structure was the D3 district, which is across the street, but then evaluating the appropriateness of doing a zoning change for the site felt like a spot zoning. And we felt also that with the height reduction that we were arguably within the scope of allowances, especially in consideration of the height discussion that we had here about a structure that should it have provided 4 levels of parking would have, within the typical site development or within the scope of site development allowances, achieved 185 feet. And I do want to remind those who are on the commission, in particular those who are new to this, that as I'm sure you know, the council is capable of making a decision to exceed the allowances. It's on us to justify it.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Let's see, next is Carl Klein.
All
Mr.
right.
Klein.
Yes, hi. I have a question. Has the development team for the proposed plan development been in consultation with the City of Evanston Historic Preservation staff? Because the proposed plan development is well within 500 feet of an Evanston landmark and the Evanston Lake Shore Historic District. And was the plan development did you take into account the view shed and visual character of the historic district, that this would be towering over a historic district?
Yeah.
Hi. That's not a consideration that we were asked to look at in the course of this project through a couple of rounds of DAPR review and discussions with staff and discussions with the aldermen. I believe it's the church that's within that historic district proper, that in terms of its the boundaries of the historic district being adjacent to the property or potentially within 500 feet. Maybe there's some others, excuse me, I think there probably are some others that are within 500 feet because of Hinman. And we have been engaged with, certainly with the church about this, but the in particular, the view shed's impacts on the character of the historic district is not something we've been asked to address. And we, as you can see from our record, we haven't addressed that in our record, our submittals.
Well, just one more question. That a plan development is.
I think you're on mute, sir.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, thanks.
All right. To follow up, a plan development is supposed to conform with the general comprehensive plan. And so I'm just asking again, did you read the general comprehensive plan and did you recognize that historic preservation is a key?
Yes, we did read the comprehensive plan. We submitted statements that we think addressed how this project complies with the comprehensive plan. I don't recall whether those statements specifically address the component of historic preservation in particular, because the building itself isn't within the historic preservation district. But in terms of consistency with the plan and the arguments we've set forth, that's in the record from our application.
Okay. Let's see. Next on my list. I just lost it again. Bear with me, please. All right. Leslie Shad from Bird Friendly Evanston.
Yes, I already discussed, exchanged emails with the applicant, so I'm holding comments. Thanks.
Okay, you're gonna wait for comments. Thank you.
I'm not going to comment at the meeting, sir.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Bonnie Wilson, do you have any questions?
No, I have a comment.
Okay, thank you. Sue Lolbach.
Yes, I do have a quick question for staff. I believe this project was originally proposed maybe in 2017, before the most recent inclusionary zoning ordinance was passed. And I was wondering, how long will the old inclusionary ordinance be the one that this project is tied to? Is that indefinite, or is there some time limit under which they would need to switch to the new inclusionary zoning ordinance?
Yeah, thank you. So, correct, it was submitted just prior to the inaction of the current IHO. I don't know if I can answer an exact date. Once the application is concluded, if there's a decision from City Council at that point, certainly, then any new subsequent application would be subject to the new IHO.
Okay, so there's not, if this goes on 5 years, they would still be able to use the old IHO.
I think we'd have to evaluate the circumstances of it and whether there's a deficient application.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and then last on my list is Kira Kelly. Ms. Kelly, are you here with us today?
Yes.
Okay,
Hi.
great.
Oops, sorry about that. Hi. Yes, I had a couple questions. Maybe I missed this. Is this an age-restricted senior building, luxury building, or is it not? So I don't know who that question is for, maybe Scott or the developers.
I can answer for the developers. It's not age restricted. It's marketed to a certain age, but it's not restricted.
Okay. What was your thinking behind that? I mean, if we're kind of talking about this in terms of, you know, a senior facility. I know others in town, the Avador just down the block is a luxury senior 17-story high-rise, you know, but it is age restricted. Why are you marking it to seniors but not designating it as such?
Well, 1 second. I think we're going to have Jeff Michael attempt to answer that question.
Okay.
As Tim indicated, so this project is to be age targeted or age marketed as opposed to age restricted. My understanding, there are some legal implications that come with having a project being age restricted, which is something that we did not want to bind ourselves to or get involved with. Just like the Marion next door, it's age marketed just by way of and vis-a-vis the amenities that are offered there. We feel that just being age, targeting a certain age will achieve the objective and the profile that we're hoping to get for this building. So we didn't see the reason to have to restrict it.
What type of amenities are senior? I don't know why
I
that's.
didn't hear the rest of the question.
I don't know why it's echoing.
Well, it's going to be designed with, you know, a senior population in mind in terms of, for instance, you know, the valet parking to make, you know, handling of their vehicles. We're going to have dining facilities there, and they're going to be able to utilize the dining facilities of the Marion next door. You know, the two buildings be physically connected. There's going to be social programs that are targeted for seniors, you know, from educational to, you know, social gatherings, card rooms. The overall just interior design atmosphere of the Legacy will also be aiming towards a more senior population. So it's going to have a lot of the programmatic amenities that we currently have at the Marion next door will also be in Legacy.
Okay, I just find that interesting just because we have some new dedicated senior buildings that did go through the legalities. Because otherwise we just have I mean, not even otherwise, in any case, we have just an overabundance of luxury rental high-rises with fairly high vacancies. So it seems like this could easily turn into just yet another luxury high-rise rental. Could that happen? I can't hear you. I can't hear you.
Yeah, sorry, you're muted. There was echo, so I muted.
On the precipice of having what we would deem to be a stabilized, asset for senior living. So we're pretty confident. And then that's why we're paying special attention to the unit mix also, that we've learned just from experience what people want at the Marion. We feel like there's that demand there.
Okay, I missed the beginning of what you said. I think you were muted, but that's okay. And then, yeah, I wondered, I found just a quick Google search on senior housing and have some kind of, it's, sort of a lot of articles talking about in, the context of COVID in the future, how COVID-19 will shape the future of senior living, more aging in place, Barron's article, COVID-19, let's see, senior living margins squeezed by COVID-19, different long-term solutions, impact of senior living occupancy. It looks, the industry seems like there's a lot of questions about these type of huge, dense, high-rise situations for seniors in light of COVID. And hopefully there'll be a vaccine going forward, but just industry-wide, it seems like there's a lot of concern and different ways of looking at senior living going forward. Have you seen these, and are you concerned? These are major articles and major business.
Sure. With all due respect, I'm sure what you're reading is, I haven't seen those specific articles, but I could probably find articles like that probably permeating every single industry that there is out there, and the death knell of those industries just due to COVID. We're optimistic at some point we're going to come out of this, and the world eventually will go back to normal. We're not putting our shovels in the ground tomorrow, thankfully, on this thing. But we're optimistic overall on what the demands are just for senior living. I've gone to several conferences throughout the country on this, and just, seen the same demographic statistics that others have seen on just the aging population that we have here in the U.S., specifically here in Evanston. And we are confident that the demand is there.
Okay, so there's no concerns, just particularly with seniors, because they're most vulnerable, to this disease.
No, I mean, but we're gonna try to implement some, new designs that will address obviously what we're going through with COVID, and have as many touchless points as you can. And we're not quite there yet, but we're going to consult with Tim and interior designers to make sure that we could address some of the heightened sensitivities that people now have. They're legitimate in going forward and design the new building.
Okay.
We've done some of that stuff in the Marion too, which, sanitization stations everywhere, modifying your elevators to touchless elevators and things like that. So there's going to be a whole new cottage industry of these sort of amenities to put into these buildings.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then I understand that, as Scott was just saying, as far as the inclusionary housing ordinance, I think your proposal was turned in literally the day before the new IHO guidelines. Would you ever consider being upping that to what's now required?
I think your question was to up our inclusionary housing.
Yeah, I think it was turned in very close to the day that a new IHO guidelines were launched.
Right. I think the suggestion was that we snuck the application in before a deadline, which really wasn't the case.
I just wondered if you would be interested, if that's consideration to go along with the new IHO requirements.
I'm sorry, if you're muted for half of that, what's the question?
If your company would consider matching, going with the new IHO requirements.
The short answer is no. As it stands right now, I think it's going to be the second largest contribution to that fund that Evanston has had. And that's not even counting the public benefit, the 0.5% of our construction budget that we are offering in public benefits. So we think, as my team has addressed previously here, we think it's pretty sizable in terms of overall package that we're offering in relation to our variance asks here. So we're comfortable with where we're at in terms of the contribution.
Okay. And then, sorry, my final question, I haven't gone by there lately or paid attention, but is the ground floor of your new addition, is there a tenant on the first floor currently?
Yeah, I think we have approximately 3,200 square feet of retail. Is that what the number is, Tim? 3,200 square feet of retail. What do you mean?
In the annex. In the annex right now.
Oh
yeah, in the 1619 building?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's commercial tenant there. European Wax recently moved in. Then we have, I think, 1,600 square feet of retail currently available.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. That concludes my list of individuals that signed up prior to the meeting to provide questions. Is there anyone else on the call right now that is has any questions for staff? Okay, hearing none. We can close the question portion of the public question portion of the of this hearing. At this time, where am I? Give me 1 second here. Okay, so persons or groups with an ownership or interest in property within 1,000 feet of this property may request to a continuance for the purpose of presenting evidence to rebut testimony that they have heard given today by the applicant. If anyone in this meeting wants to make that request, they will need to state what portions of the applicant's testimony they want to rebut and what, basically what issues they want to rebut at the continued meeting. So is there such a request from the public? Okay, hearing none. We can move on to public comment, and I'm going to go down through the same list. And again, when I get to the end of my list, I will ask if there are any other people who failed to sign up that would like to make a public comment. Mr. Mangum, I believe we are at there's a 2-minute time limit for individuals, and then people speaking on behalf of a group can have 5 minutes. Is that accurate?
That is correct.
Okay, I will be keeping the time, and the first person on my list is Matt Feldman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My wife Ellen and I own and reside in a condominium at 522 Church Street, which is in the required zone, which is in the same block as the proposed development at 1621 Chicago. For the record, my wife and I also sent a letter of opposition to this project to Megan Jones on September 27th, which has not yet been loaded to the public comments available on the Commission website. I first want to note that there is a large and growing crisis in affordable housing in this city that is likely to become more severe as a result of the pandemic and the necessary measures being taken to control the spread. By my count, this is the 4th iteration of this project to be proposed by this developer, with the first one having been submitted in 2017 and the current proposal having been submitted in December of 2018. Given that we are 3/4 of the way through 2020, I will ask what came up earlier, which is at what point should this project be held to the standard established in the Inclusionary Housing Ordinance that took effect on January 1st, 2019. Payment of cash into a fund will not have a direct impact in taking advantage of developments such as this to begin to address the severe shortage in affordable housing. Rather than repeat that which has been noted earlier regarding substantial variances in site development allowances the developer is requesting with respect to building height, FAR, number of units, and parking spaces, I would like to quote from the memorandum regarding this proposal drafted by staff and directed to the chair and members of this commission, and then pose a simple question. Staff feels that the proposed public benefits list largely consist of items that are requirements, specifically benefit the development and not the general public, or are inherent to the proposed development itself. Given this conclusion by staff, an important question before this commission should be why such a proposal should be recommended when it provides such nominal public benefits and those at substantial degradation to the character of the immediate community and the safety of pedestrians and bicycle riders along the east side of Chicago Avenue. I respectfully request that the commission seriously consider this question and commit to answering it should a decision be made to recommend this proposal onward. And thank you for your consideration.
All right, thank you, Mr. Feldman. Next on my list is Dennis and Jacqueline Harder.
Thank you. We live at 522 Church, the southwest corner church in Chicago, the same building that the Feldmans just described their residence. I myself have spent 45 years in city planning and real estate and understand the developer's perspective to maximize potential at this site. We submitted also written comments to the commission. What follows is a summary of the reasons I urge the Plan Commission to deny approval of this plan development. First, on May 7th, the May 7th staff report to the Plan Commission recommends denial, and I think most of those points are still valid. The developer requested allowances for the additional height, floor area, units, etc., are excessive and extraordinarily out of sync with the underlying planning framework and zoning parameters for the site. And rather than proposing a set of comparable extraordinary community benefits to justify those allowances, the developer proposed benefits that are modest to the extent of being grossly inadequate. Approval of this plan development proposal would allow development with little regard to the existing planning framework and zoning parameters for the site. In essence, the developer is trying to push a square peg into a round hole. Instead of considering allowing such dramatic change to occur by a back door through the plan development process, the city, staff, and the community together should revisit whether the existing underlying planning and zoning frameworks for this area should be changed. This invites a different kind of review and approval process. This is the major point I'd like to make. Again, I urge denial of this proposed plan development. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, sir. Next is Linda Del Bosque.
Hi, thank you again. You know, as I'm running for alderman in this ward, I have to think of my constituents first and foremost. Then I think about our community members when they are traveling through the corridor of Chicago Avenue and how congested and how unsafe it's going to be. Then I think about the height, and it's just changing our landscape. It's becoming a domino effect. Then I'm thinking about the sense as if we actually need more senior living here in Evanston, or do we really need to think about the continuum of care in Evanston if we have adult children who have aging parents? So if we really look at aging in place, we really need to look more into, and I say we, the city has responsibility to look into organizations who are going to provide a more full spectrum of aging in place with some type of CCRC put in place, like Presby, located off of, Emerson towards West. So I personally appreciate the Marion legacy and wanting to provide a more luxury building. I just don't see a need for Evanston. And so my comment would be, you know, between the numbers, the height, we just don't need another senior living, a luxury senior living age restricted or unage restricted, it's still age restricted because of the program services offered to the residents. I can't live in there. I don't want to go to a senior choir practice, so it is age restricted. It's just easier for them to put that, to label it that way. Again, I've been senior living. I'm on 18 years within that industry. And I truly believe we need to look more, I say we, the city, need to look more for CCRC to provide aging in place more secure for our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Delbosque.
You're welcome, Mr. Rice.
All right, William Brown from the First United Methodist Church. Mr. Brown, since you're speaking on behalf of an organization, you will have 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you. Good evening, Commissioners and Chairman Isaac. My name is William Brown. I've been an Evanston resident for 43 years. I reside at 1200 Mulford Street in Evanston. I've been a member of the First United Methodist Church for 35 years and currently serve as its chair of the Board of Trustees. And the reason that I'm speaking to you this evening is that. I'm speaking on behalf of a congregation of the church, some 650 people. First, before my comments, I'd like to thank the Horizon Realty Group for their willing to share their plans with us. We had a meeting in the summer with the trustees of the church that was most informative. And just yesterday, I had a meeting with the architects and representative for the project and the traffic engineer that spoke earlier on the alley function and their loading dock. So all that information is much appreciated in helping us understand what's proposed. So now my comments. The church sits on the edge of the Lakeshore Historic District, as has been noted, and has provided an anchoring presence for this area of Evanston since 1870. As designed at 17 stories, the proposed building is completely overbearing on the surrounding historic built environment. It would be a mere 20-odd feet away from the western edge of the church. It's also disturbing that such a tall project would be considered for the east side of Chicago Avenue, where the buildings step down on their way to the lakefront. Further, the new building would be directly across the street from an existing building of more than 20 stories. I would worry about a canyon effect getting started on Chicago Avenue with this circumstance. I recall in a previous meeting, it may have been our trustees meeting, it was asked, why does the building need to be so tall? The answer then from Horizon was, because construction costs are so expensive. Okay, so that suggests that some economy of scale is needed, a bigger building. But the reality is that taller buildings cost more to build the taller they get. I think that the real answer to the question is maximizing return on investment. It's a small site, and the way to make the most of it is to build as tall a building as possible. And this building did have earlier iterations where it was considerably taller. But basically, the idea of return on investment trumping the benefit of a neighborhood just does not seem right to us here at First United Methodist Church. Besides the height of the building, its impact on alley traffic is a major concern for the church with its 15 spaces that are situated in the alley on the south side of our church building. At present, the alley is so busy at both ends that being blocked in the church lot can lead to delays of up to 20 minutes or more. Not to mention not being able to get in sometimes if you're trying to go to the lot. On one occasion, our senior pastor was delayed getting to the hospital on an emergency call response. It's not a good situation. The proposed building will make a bad situation worse with its increased alley traffic generated by the activity of the building itself. Some tenant deliveries, move-ins and move-outs, trash pickup, building operations deliveries, just to mention a few of the activities that are likely to impact vehicles in the existing alley of just 20 feet wide. If food service is considered for the retail space and also elsewhere in the building for the tenants, there would be even more traffic, congesting the alley even more.
30 seconds, sir.
Making use of the lot even more difficult for us. So in conclusion, I would ask the Plan Commission to vote no for this project for the reasons that I have described. And I thank you for your attention, your time, and your consideration of these concerns.
Okay, thank you, sir. Next, I have Bob Froscher.
Thanks. I'm one of thousands of Evanston residents who have changed the complexion of Evanston's downtown over the last 20 years by choosing to live there. We've bought real estate. We pay millions of dollars in taxes annually. We've made downtown alive again. And we rely on the city's zoning ordinances to protect our health, safety, and real estate investments. This building grossly violates the zoning. And let's be clear, these are the facts. DAPA committee unanimously have voted to deny approval. The project unequivocally violates the 2009 downtown plan, which recommends building heights of 6 to 10 stories for this specific block of Chicago Avenue. It does not meet the standards of approval, which it must satisfy to move forward, and it does not meet the design guidelines for planned developments due to its mass. Doesn't meet the standards for special use, as it will cause a negative cumulative effect when one takes into account the impact of incremental car, taxi, Uber, Lyft, FedEx, Amazon, Grubhub, DoorDash traffic on what is already a heavy pedestrian, church, and bike traffic. Back to the 226 meeting. Direct quotes from two very wise commissioners. A variance should be in the, quote, minor scope of a position. This is major. The first step in evaluating the project for approval is whether the zoning should be changed. If the market desires a development like this, request the change to zoning. Request the D3 gets extended one more block. I support opposing this, and I request that the Plan Commission not allow parking sleight of hand carry the day. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Froscher. Next, I have a Carl Klein.
All right, good evening. The proposed plan development at 1621 Chicago Avenue threatens to impede on the First United Methodist property and have an impact on the mission and ministry of the staff and congregation. Tonight, when you consider approval or disapproval of this proposed plan development, please take into account the public comment and apply them to the standards for a special use. Point B of the standards for a special use clearly states that a planned development must comply with the purposes and policies of the Comprehensive General Plan. The 2000 City of Evanston Comprehensive General Plan was cited and relied on by the Illinois Appellate Court in 2015 as a codified plan. The plan states, quote, historic preservation continues to be a source of civic pride for Evanston. With a vital preservation community and with a rich architectural heritage, Evanston remains at the forefront of the movement to preserve individual buildings and historic districts that show outstanding architectural, historical, and cultural merit. It goes on to state, Evanston should seek to preserve the structures and environments which have given the community much of its physical appeal and special visual character. An intangible but equally important value is the sense of history given to those who live here. The shared history of landmark homes and buildings give continuity to the entire community. It is important to recognize that according to Section 6366 in City Code, if there is a finding by the city that a planned development exceeds the site development allowances, such excess is necessary to achieve a public benefit. The public benefits to the surrounding neighborhood and the city as a whole that are intended to be derived from the approval of planned developments include, but are not limited to, a whole list, and then Point C, preservation and enhancement of historic and natural resources that significantly contribute to the character of the city. First United Methodist Church, the oldest congregation in Evanston, is a local landmark located within the Lakeshore Historic District. The present church was designed by native Evanstonian and church member Thomas Talmadge. He began his career working as a draftsman for fellow Evanstonian Daniel Burnham.
Mr. Klein, I need you to finish up.
I'm going to be finishing up just one, yeah. In the National Register nomination form, it states that the Lakeshore Historic District is uniquely significant as the product of Evanston's municipal zoning ordinance in 1921, the first in Illinois and one of the first in the nation. An argument can be made that the presently discussed developer is not honoring the city's Lakeshore Historic District. This is because the developer's proposal violates the zoning ordinance. It does so because it does not honor a contributing factor to the historic district in which the First United Methodist Church is located. One more sentence. Preserving visual character and view sheds is important for the community. It is important because it fosters civic pride in the beauty and noble accomplishments of the past. Preservation of visual character protects and enhances cities, attracting tourists and visitors. Preservation of visual character supports and stimulates business and industry.
All right, thank you, Mr.
Central State. One more sentence. The Penn Central case is also interesting because the United States Supreme Court acknowledges that at its very core, historic preservation and the maintenance of architectural integrity and visual character have a definite financial value for the property owners and ultimately for the community as a whole. I am concerned that the
Mr. Klein.
plan development will negatively affect First United Methodist Church. So I would recommend denial. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Leslie Shad, I believe you said you did not you weren't going to be making comments, but if you're still on and you would like to make one. Okay, I guess Ms. Shad's no longer with us. Bonnie Wilson.
Hi, I'm Bonnie Wilson. I live in the First Ward, and I'm a past member of the Age-Friendly Task Force Housing Committee. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
And now I am on the Joining Forces for Affordable Housing Committee, which is part of Connections for the Homeless. In May 2019, the Age-Friendly Housing Committee presented to City Council the market analysis for affordable assisted living, which was prepared by Sawgrass Partners with Jonathan Perlman mentioned today. The City and Evanston Community Foundation helped to fund this study. This report indicated the following: 3,619 senior households are projected to be living on incomes of less than $40,000 by the year 2024. There are projected to be about 384 affordable units available only for senior citizens by the year 2024. All senior buildings right now have waiting lists. The numbers of units will change slightly as the Housing Authority of Cook County and the South Boulevard projects progress, but affordable housing for seniors is critical now and in the future. In order to address the need documented in the Sawgrass Partners analysis, we think the Marion should be asked to include at least 21 affordable units or 10% in its proposal to conform with the current inclusionary zoning ordinance. At a minimum, the amount of money it is paying into the Affordable Housing Fund should be increased to meet the current ordinance requirements. Although the Marion first proposed this new building before the latest inclusionary housing ordinance was passed, which was discussed this evening, we believe that the new information provided by the Sawgrass report, along with changing times, make this a timely request and one that should be considered. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, ma'am. Sue Lolbach.
Yes. So I'm Sue Lolbach. I work at Connections for the Homeless and head up our program and community coalition called Joining Forces for Affordable Housing. To reiterate what Ms. Wilson just said, there's a projected gap of 3,235 affordable residential units for seniors in Evanston by 2024. At the same time, according to the asset analysis performed for the city by Jones Lang LaSalle and presented just in April 2020, more than 500 market rate units have entered the market since the beginning of 2019, the two newest of which sit at 40% vacancy, indicating that the market has been slow to absorb market rate units. This is the first time I've seen documentation on this. The report indicates that the other properties, other than these most recent two, delivered in the market since 2015, have generally leased up within 24 months, indicating that market absorption may be slowing. It leads me to believe that all of these empty market rate units are available for senior citizens who can afford them. However, there is nothing available for senior citizens who cannot afford them. The Marion proposal involves significant requests for variances with only minimal public benefit and nothing to benefit the senior population that will need affordable housing moving forward. Additionally, since the Marion first initiated its proposal, new information has become available through the Sawgrass Partners study, which was mentioned, which really focuses on the need for affordable units for seniors, not for market rate units for seniors. And finally, the world has changed with the advent of the pandemic. According to the City of Evanston's Economic Development Department in a presentation made just at 2 City Council meetings ago, the need now must be to preserve people's well-being. We agree. Therefore, I second Ms. Wilson's request that the Plan Commission deny the current proposal from the Marion and insist that affordable units be included in the development as a way to provide public benefit. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Lolbach. Ms. Kelly, Kira Kelly.
Hi. Just looking over the May 7th memo to you, the Plan Commission, city staff, the Dapper Committee carefully reviewed all aspects of this proposal and concluded, and I quote, staff recommends denial of this plan development for the proposed building. The committee unanimously recommended denial. They found while the revised proposal slightly reduces the FAR and building height, the proposed site development are so significant, 72% greater than the maximum site development allowances, to the point that it would trigger a 2/3 council majority. And we citizens implore you, the Plan Commission, not to leave it to City Council, to be honest, without your denial. From our experience, Council does not necessarily carefully review the project, are not as familiar with the zoning districts, and may not have a chance to review all the details. So we are counting on you. Your last meeting in February, the commission seemed clearly poised to deny approval of this building. And looking through your comments in the packet, it appears the same issues remain, even with these slight revisions. Comments like it's too large of variance requests for the zoning that's in place. The D4 zoning has a purpose of transition. It's not the same as D3, even though it's across the street. And asking for these huge allowances and little in return for in form of public benefits is an issue. And staff's memo, the public benefits largely consist of requirements that benefit the development or inherit to it, not the general public. Given the extent of the requested allowances, the benefits are limited in scope. And Mr. Michael mentioned the contribution of the construction budget, but I see here in the memo that these are to go towards paying for repairs to the public alley east of the Marion. So it sounds like that needed to happen for its own use. Anyway, again, the staff's review every single standard of approval, standard for special use, standard for plan development in the D4 districts, compliance with the zoning ordinance, the downtown plan, compliance with the design guidelines. Every single category, they found significant issues that do not seem to meet the threshold of approval. Even the actual intent of the D4 district is supposed to provide a suitable transition between downtown districts and the residential district, and this does not do that. And in fact, this is the size of a building that should be in the D3 zone. The Plan Commission approving this is essentially extending, and I don't even know if this is legal, extending the D3 district. Anyway, the bike path, I'm someone with 4 little kids, and we use that bike path. A huge curb cut. Already it's a very dicey situation right there with the streets and all the other curb cuts. Okay, anyway, it's a $13 million bike path, and I think that this development is not worth the the damage and the safety issues with that area. And then finally, since we're not following any existing downtown plan, even though we have one, we're letting developers guide the downtown development with endless luxury development. COVID has really exposed the vulnerabilities of this, as we see an almost deserted downtown Evanston, pretty much void with residents. I know it's geared toward Northwestern students and people in the downtown buildings, but we can't lose this stretch of Chicago Avenue that has the most popular restaurant in town, I would argue, has a great outdoor area that actually does draw people. I know it's COVID, but I just went to Old Orchard and downtown Wilmette, and it's starting to get very hopping with people dying to have a destination to go to, busy. Yes. Anyway, I urge you to vote against this and not take away a whole stretch of affordable spaces to independent businesses. Yeah, we really do not. Sue Lillenbach mentioned the Jones, Lang, and LaSalle report, and the vacancy rates of these luxury developments are very high right now. This is like fresh off the presses.
I'm sorry, I have to cut you off there.
Okay, I hope that you listen to the staff who has carefully reviewed this and see that none of these standards have been met, and I hope that you deny this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kelly. All right, so is there any other member of the public that has that would like to make a comment with respect to this item? Okay, hearing none, we're going to close the public record on this. But in fact, actually, does the applicant have any final statements they'd like to make before the commission deliberates?
No, we don't.
Okay, thank you, sir. All right, so commissioners, it is time for our deliberation. I actually have a question for staff. 2 questions for staff. Number one, the payment to the payment pursuant to the IHO, is that a public benefit? Is that in our in our rules, in our ordinance, is that actually a public benefit, given that the compliance with the IHO is required?
Staff would not consider that to be a public benefit. Basically, it's meeting a code requirement.
Okay.
More the building code or other codes.
Okay. And then my other question, just to be clear here, the fact that the applicant is relying on the old iteration of the IHO versus the new iteration of the IHO, it would appear to me that is not a germane factor for us to be considering when looking at this project. Am I correct in that assumption?
I would say yes. The IHO is out of the purview of the Plan Commission, and the applicant is meeting the requirements of the ordinance. If they were to be exceeding the requirements of the ordinance, then that could be something to be considered a public benefit.
Okay, thank you, sir. All right, so commissioners, what do you think? We have just as a reminder, we have two issues before us. We have the subdivision of the one-story portion of this existing planned development, which if we allow this area to be removed from the PD and take it back to its underlying zoning of a D4, would increase the FAR and increase the variance of parking for the remaining portion of the parcel, the Marion and the Marion Legacy, I believe, is what we're calling those two buildings. And so there's that portion, and then there's the planned development for the portion that would then be removed. So it's a two-step process, and so staff's recommendation is approve one and don't approve the other, or recommend one and don't recommend the other. You may think differently about recommend, not recommend, not recommend. But I think those are really I think there's really only 3 iterations of that. But just as a reminder, there's going to be 2 things we're going to be talking about and looking at here. So with that, I'll open it up.
I have a question for staff. I assume I can ask it. I'm kind of focused on height and FAR, and it really, maybe if we can flip to that slide that we just had up, slide 40. My question is, what are the development allowances that allow the height to go from 105 feet to 145 feet?
Essentially, that extra 40 feet is the site development allowance that can be requested. And then if the development were to exceed that, then it's exceeding the maximum development allowance, and the consequence of that is it would require a 2/3 majority vote at City Council.
I see. So it's just a request. It's not something that they have to provide to get that development allowance.
Correct. There's not a fixed criteria. It's not an incentive based on providing something.
Okay.
Commissioner Lindwall, you're on mute.
Sorry. Yes, I also have a question for staff. I just wanted to clarify, the 2009 downtown plan was adopted by the City Council. Is that correct? I know the zoning wasn't, but was the plan adopted?
That's correct. Yeah, the plan was adopted. The zoning was not, the form-based code was not implemented.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so let's sort of get into the weeds a little bit here. With respect to the subdivision, what do commissioners think about the applicant's request to remove the one-story portion from the planned development? They obviously, the applicant obviously previously used that area in order to build up the Marion Legacy, and now wants to take it out and make it and add to it. I personally don't see an issue with it. If this was their plan all along, I would have rather had them not include the one story when they were asking for their planned development to begin with. But I don't see the increase in the FAR to be that controversial. And in general, I think the development of the one-story portion makes sense for that area. That's just my thought, but wondering what other commissioners think. Commissioner Johnson, you have your hand up and you are on mute. There you go.
Thank you, Chair Isaac. I concur. I don't have an issue with the subdivision portion, the first motion as it is.
I don't either.
Nor do I.
Okay. All right. So I think unless someone wants to talk about the subdivision portion, and staff, let me just ask you really quick. Do you want us to treat each one separate and go through the standards on A first, have a vote on that, and then go to B, or should we just sort of do it all at once?
I think in the end there should be two motions. So there should be a motion on A, on the subdivision and the adjustment, and a motion on the plan development request. I think it'd be up to the commission whether you want to resolve and dispose of one issue before moving on to the next, or complete your discussion deliberations, go through the standards, and then have the two motions at the conclusion.
Okay. I don't have a problem doing it all together unless other commissioners feel otherwise. I think we'll move forward in that way. Okay. So as to the plan development, what do you guys think?
Well, I guess I'll go first. So regarding the Port Corsair and the curb cut, I don't have strong feelings either way, I suppose, about that. What I continue to focus on is the height and the FAR. And, we spoke about this at the last time this was presented, and we said that, this was a big ask. And I still think it's a big ask. The spirit, if not the letter, and I'll talk about that, of the transition zone of the D4, is that the height of the building significantly steps down to get to the residential district to the east. And this is clearly not, I don't believe, enough of a step. But what bothers me is the diagram that's shown on this slide. And it just astounds me that apparently with the zoning, under the zoning, that you can have a building that is 185 feet, as shown in illustration number 3. And so, if we were to talk about what the zoning allows, apparently the zoning allows a 185-foot building if it's stacked the way illustration 3 is stacked. I don't believe that follows it may follow the rule, but it does not follow the spirit of this zoning. So I think that's an issue, at least for me.
Well, and remember that Mr. Mangum confirmed that the site development allowance of 40 feet is completely discretionary, and so really, as of right, they can go 145, but 40 feet of that would have to be parking. So that isn't one of the 4 items pictured here, but as of right, that's what they'd have. But you're right, because on an FAR basis, if they were going to keep it as of right, that would be a skinnier building, and it probably wouldn't be as imposing upon the residential to the east, right? They'd probably have it thinner, either east-west or north-south. But you're right. It would still be 145 feet, and 145 feet, as you can see from number 2, diagram 2. I wouldn't say it would be towering, but it's still significantly taller than the surrounding buildings.
But if the building were skinnier, couldn't you still do the 185 with 4 levels of parking?
It's still down to a site development allowance. So it's discretionary. It's not, it's 105 is the zoning, and they can ask for an extra 40 feet through a site development allowance, and then they absolutely get 40 feet if they have above ground parking. Okay, but when they put in the above ground parking, then they're changing what it looks like from the
I understand.
Yeah,
I understand. But it is possible.
Absolutely.
May I offer a little historical perspective on this?
Please.
I worked with the Plan Commission to develop the 1989 downtown plan, which, kind of then, along with the 1986 comprehensive plan that then ended up leading to the rewrite of the zoning ordinance. And while I was not involved in the rewrite of the zoning ordinance, I did follow it. And at the end of the day, one of the reasons for the D4 district was that there were a number of potential development sites. This particular site being one, a block to the south where the Hyatt is, that was another potential development site. And so in enacting the D4 zoning district, one of the reasons that it has such generous development allowances that is really that the city council was trying to encourage redevelopment of some of the underutilized properties that are mapped within the D4 district, kind of, throughout the periphery of the downtown. And I think, at the time there were a lot of residents who were kind of concerned with the height, the development allowances that were included in that district. But that was a conscious policy decision on the part of the city council. The reason I asked about the downtown plan, the 2009 downtown plan, and its status is, I think that, as someone mentioned, that really, the recommended height for this D4 zoning district, when that plan was adopted, was something on the order of 6 to 10 stories, if I remember correctly. So I think that kind of is really are the two policy components that are applicable here. And personally, I think unless there are significant public benefits, that the 105 feet is what we really should be targeting. And personally, I don't think that the development allowances that the applicant, or the public benefits that the applicant has suggested, really justify the 185 feet or even the 145 feet, which would be normally allowed. So that's kind of my initial thoughts.
Okay, thank you.
I think the other question I would have is, when you get into these transitional districts, if you do allow so many allowances with both height and mass and FAR, when do you ever really have a transition that's not abrupt as you go down to the residential or less commercial districts? And it's tough because I think, as Commissioner Lindwall said, many of those areas can be redeveloped, which makes sense, but the devil is in the details. And this just seems, to me, larger, more massive than the public benefits would really justify.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just ask a question again on the 40-foot development allowance. The developer requests it. Mr. Mangum indicated there's no criteria that's used to determine. What's the process? Somebody wants it, who approves it, and what's the basis on which that would be approved or denied?
Essentially, the Section 6365 deals with site development allowances, and it states subject to the specific standards and limitations established for plan developments in each district. The Plan Commission may recommend approval of, and the City Council may grant site development allowances for plan development relative to the following, affecting bulk and density, and it goes through the items that can be plan development allowances, and height and FAR are two of those. But there are no particular criteria specifically for the site development allowance itself.
Okay.
Let me make one more comment and this is really a positive response to the architecture. I really think the architects, given the FAR and that they had to work with, the square footage rather, they did a pretty nice job, I'd say, incredible job of arranging the mass and detailing it so that it looks as the least like the large mass that it could have looked like. I just think they did a great job with the facade and with the massing. So I wanted to compliment them on that.
I would say that if this was a 10-story building with one level of underground parking, I think I'd think much differently about it. Because I agree, like I like the porte cochere. I understand the concerns about the bike lane, but if we're talking about redevelopment, you need to have parking, and I think it's better, given what we've heard about with the current use of the alley, that you minimize it, and they did that. So there are good things about this proposal. Just for me, I don't know that there are enough good things to approve it the way they've asked for it. And honestly, I'm a little disappointed that in the time they took from the last meeting in February, that they decided that removing 2 floors was going to be sufficient to address our concerns. I don't think it's addressed my concerns. All right, with that, shall we move on to the standards, or is there any other comments or questions at this time?
Chair Isaac.
Yes, please.
I just wanted to say, in a general sense, I am inclined to support the this project for a couple of reasons. While it's not strictly within a higher density district, it is directly across the street from a building of similar height. I do appreciate the developer spending the money to bury the parking and retain more of the above ground space for active uses. This increasing vitality in downtown in a very transit and alternative transportation portion of our city. In a general sense, this is an appropriate site for a project of this character. Unfortunately, especially now, there is a very apparent need downtown for additional customers for ground level retail and dining that we so cherish in our city. And this would put more residents downtown. This would put more pedestrians on the street and would activate our sidewalks. That is is certainly something that's needing, you know, within these pandemic times and not. And, you know, this is, the subject property is quite frankly, it's an underutilized property. It's one story. I don't think anybody on this commission or anybody in this meeting could successfully argue that it's currently at its highest and best use. So in a general sense, I am inclined to support this. You know, I like others would appreciate greater public accommodations, but as is, you know, I do appreciate the modifications that have been made since the last time we heard this particular project.
Question for you, Commissioner Johnson. What do you think about the argument about the, you know, approving this building would be a lack of transition from the, you know, from the downtown district on the west side of the block to the residential district on the east side of the block?
I mean, the unfortunate reality is those transitional areas have to be somewhere. You know, there has to be a property on one side of a block that's commercial, the other side of a block that's residential, or one side of an alley that's commercial, the other side of an alley that's residential. It's those lines have to be somewhere. And in this particular spot, I just find it perhaps incongruent that we have fairly dense commercial development in a spot that's very close to residential zoning. And I, you know, I would venture to think that perhaps some of the residents that live in that R6 or live in that R1 live there precisely because they can walk to the bank and they can walk to the Whole Foods, and they live there precisely because they're close to that boundary line between a commercial and residential neighborhood.
You don't see a benefit in, I know we're saying there's a 20-story building on the west side of Chicago. You don't see a benefit of having a step down from the 20, because I don't get the sense that that this commission is going to say no to the subdivision. I think everyone, I get a sense that most of the commissioners are going to be in favor of making the one-story parcel, like, I think we recognize that it's underutilized and that we're gonna move forward with allowing them to utilize it to its potential. But you know, there being a step down from the 20, you know, 20 to 8 to 10, maybe 11, and then down to, like, I don't know if it's 4 to 6 stories that's on the east side of that block. But so you don't believe that there's a benefit to maintaining that step down?
No, Mr. Chair, I think that would be better.
Okay.
That would be better, but the question, if the question posed to me for my vote is what is proposed permissible or not, as far as an all or nothing today, since we've kicked this around a couple of times. I am inclined to say that what is being proposed today is better then even with the perhaps disadvantage of not having a step down. In a perfect world, that would be great, but that's not what's on the table tonight.
My opinion is that the fact that we're being asked to vote on two separate things, which is allowing for the subdivision, means that, and then the plan development as a separate item, means that it's not an all or nothing, and that we can say, yes, please, utilize this parcel more by agreeing to the subdivision or recommending approval of the subdivision, and then also saying, no, you're not getting the full ask that you've been milling around with for I don't know, is it close to 2 years now, or probably more. That our expectation is that there be a step down, but this is not all for naught. You're getting part of your ask, and you or maybe another developer will come back with something that's more appropriate for the site. So I wouldn't say that it's all or nothing. I think there is a middle ground, and I think what I think is the middle ground, I just laid out. But that being said, let's go to I'm sorry, Commissioner Linwell.
Yeah, I think that we ought to be looking, rather than looking at the transition from the D3 to the D4, I think it's appropriate to look at what else is on the east side of Chicago Avenue. You've got the Marion, you've got the Addition, you've got the 522 Church. So we've already got kind of an established height along that block, and I think that which kind of fits within the 105-foot envelope that the zoning allows. So I think that we really kind of ought to be looking at the character of the existing development. I agree that the single story, is, it's been a redevelopment candidate for decades. And, I think that at some point something will happen. I just don't think that this particular development proposal is the answer.
Okay. Mr. Mangum, so the special use standards, this slide is really only for 4B. Is that correct?
Actually, Mr. Chair, the special use applied to the plan development, and technically the portion of 4A that the commission is considering is the adjustment to the plan development, the previous plan development. Okay. Procedurally, the subdivision, the plan commission does not expressly have a role in making a recommendation on a subdivision. The city council is the reviewing body and approval body on a subdivision. Okay. The adjustment involves the subdivision of the land.
Okay, so in looking at the special use standards on 4A, what we're looking at is basically the effect of the subdivision to the existing PD.
Correct. Yeah, changing the boundary of the plan development and the effect on the FAR, essentially.
Okay. All right. So I think now that we've gotten to this point, we should probably go through like 1 through 9 for 4A and then for 4B. I think it'll just help us, focus on the standards a little easier, make the conversation go a little easier. Let's see. First one is, it is one of the special uses specifically listed in the zoning ordinance. So we're not really affecting the uses. I would say that this is not applicable. And again, commissioners, you don't need to raise your hand. If you have something to say, please jump in. And we're talking about 4A right now. So this is the change to the existing PD to remove by removing a portion of the parcel from the PD. It is in keeping with the purposes and policies of the adopted comprehensive general plan and the zoning ordinance as amended from time to time. I would say that's satisfied. We're not really changing anything here. It will not cause a negative cumulative effect when its effect is considered in conjunction with the cumulative effect of various special uses of all types on the immediate neighborhood and the effect of the proposed type of special use upon the city as a whole. I believe in our February meeting, we talked about the the fact that this would remove parking from the from use by the Marion and Marion Legacy, and my recollection is that it didn't appear that there was going to be a significant effect on the use of the parking. In fact, I'm not sure that the outdoor parking on the removed portion of the site, I believe there was testimony that said that it wasn't really being used by the Marion or didn't need to be used. It does not interfere with or diminish value of property in the neighborhood. Again, I believe that's satisfied. It can be adequately served by public facilities and services. The removal I don't think it would affect that. Does not cause undue traffic congestion. Again, I would say that that's satisfied. Preserve significant historical and architectural resources. That would appear to me to be not applicable. Preserve significant natural and environmental features. Not applicable. It complies with all other applicable regulations of the district in which it is located and other applicable ordinances, except to the extent such regulations have been modified through the plan development process or the grant of a variation. So really what we're talking about is an increase of FAR from 3.15 to 4.2 and decrease in the number of parking spaces. And so it would seem to me that that the removal portion, that the remaining PD would still comply with all other applicable regulations, except to the extent we're agreeing to the variation. Are there any other standards that we have to look at for 4A, Scott?
Yes, the same remaining standards would apply to both.
I'm sorry, but is there another slide of standards that we need to look at for 4A?
Yes, there's the standards of plan development, which essentially refer to the standards in the downtown districts.
Okay.
And these are the standards and guidelines in the D4 district.
Okay. So let's see. Each plan development shall be compatible with surrounding development and not be of such a nature and height, bulk, or scale as to exercise any influence contrary to the purpose and intent of the zoning ordinance. I would say this is either satisfied or not applicable given what we're looking at for this portion for 4A. Each plan. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go right ahead.
I think it's satisfied. That's what I would say.
Each plan development shall enhance the identity and character of the downtown by preserving, where possible, character-giving buildings, enhancing existing streetscape amenities, maintaining retail continuity in areas where it is prominent, strengthening pedestrian orientation and scale, and contributing to the mixed-use vitality of the area. I don't know that this change would affect that. It wouldn't affect the identity and character of the downtown. So I would say that that's satisfied. Each plan development shall be compatible with and implement the adopted comprehensive general plan as amended, the plan for downtown Evanston, any adopted land use or urban design plan specific to the area, this zoning ordinance, and any other pertinent city planning and development policies. Again, the removal of the one-story would not affect that, and the remaining portion would still be compatible. Each plan development shall be completed within 2 years. This is not applicable. All landscaping treatment within the plan development, we're not changing. This modification wouldn't be changing the landscaping, considering that the one-story portion doesn't have any landscaping to speak of. All right, so site controls and standards. Walkways developed for plan development shall form a logical, safe, and convenient system for pedestrian access to all project facilities and off-site destinations likely to attract substantial pedestrian traffic. Pedestrian ways shall not be used by other automotive traffic. That is satisfied. Location, construction, and operation of parking, loading areas, and service areas shall be designed to avoid adverse effects on residential uses. This is not applicable. Principal vehicular access points shall be designed. The vehicular access points to the portion we're removing does not affect the area that's still going to be in the plan be within the plan development. Number 4, the plan development shall provide, if possible, for underground installation of utilities. This is not applicable. For every plan development, there shall be provided a market feasibility statement. Again, this is not applicable for what we're talking about in 4A. For every plan development, there shall be provided a traffic circulation impact study. Again, not applicable here. Zoning administrator may, at his discretion, require of the applicant additional studies or impact analysis. Not applicable. Okay, so I think that goes through the standards for 4A. At this point, I think we should consider a motion and a vote on 4A, and then we can move on to 4B. So do I have a motion on item 4A 19 PLND-0059, which is the subdivision / major adjustment to a plan development for 1619 Chicago Avenue?
I move that we approve item 4A.
Okay, there's a motion to approve 4A. Is there a second?
I second.
Westerberg seconds. Any amendments to the to 4A? Okay, hearing none. Is there any discussion or deliberation that anyone wants to engage in with respect to item 4A? Okay, hearing none. Let's move to vote. Ms. Jones, if you can call the roll.
Commissioner Halleck,
Yes.
Commissioner Hugo,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Linwall,
Yes.
Commissioner Westerberg,
Yes.
Chair Isaac.
Yes. Okay, item 4A passes, and it will be sent to the City Council with our recommendation of approval. Moving on to item 4B. This is the now plan development for 1621 Chicago Avenue, the 17-story apartment building with 215 units. All right, so going through the special use standards under 63510. It is one of the special uses specifically listed in the zoning ordinance. It absolutely is mixed use, and that item is satisfied. It is in keeping with purposes and policies of the adopted comprehensive general plan and the zoning ordinance as amended from time to time. I would say that that's probably satisfied.
I would kind of beg to differ just in terms of the height in comparison to what's in the proposed in the 2009 comprehensive or downtown plan, and then really kind of the development parameters contained within the D4 district ordinance, the development allowances that were contemplated to encourage development up to a certain percent, and I think that what's being proposed exceeds that.
Okay, so you're saying the policies, this would not be in keeping with the policies.
The 2009 downtown plan.
Okay, all right, I agree with that. Okay, it will not cause a negative cumulative effect when its effect is considered in conjunction with the cumulative effect of various special uses of all types on the immediate neighborhood and the effect of the proposed type of special use upon the city as a whole. What do you think? I'm gonna ask you, Commissioner Linwell, because you jumped in on the last one.
Oh, thank you. I think that the use is fine. So I don't think that in terms of the use is problematic. But again, I think that the height and the extent of the development allowances being requested would have a negative cumulative effect, particularly on that block face.
I don't know if this is relevant, but is setting a precedent relevant to this, number 3?
Can you expand on that?
Well, just that, if when we look at these projects, and in fact we talked about this, what is the height and FAR of the other buildings in this zoning area? So that's we look at precedent, and I think that you have to be careful because applicants also rely on precedent, and if there is a building right next to a site that's being developed, they're going to say, well, if you allowed that one, then you should allow this one. And so that's, I don't know if that's exactly what this is talking about, but that's how I read it.
Well, I would say that with respect to the planned development just to the north, that's part of this, parcel, they previously came in and asked for a FAR of 3.15. And we just approved an increase to that to 4.2. And on this application on 4B, they're asking for over 10. And so, maybe yes, we're setting a precedent of saying, an FAR of 10 is not acceptable on this block in this D4 district. But there's a lot of space in between.
And an applicant can come in and propose something different. I think that as you said, we just approved increasing the FAR for the existing Marion, and that kind of in part sort of sets an appropriate development density. So to then approve something at 10 point whatever it is seems to be, has the potential of creating a negative cumulative effect, not necessarily on the Marion, but if you look further to the north to the condo building on the corner, So I would say it's not satisfied, but others can weigh in as well.
All right, well, if no one wants to jump in, we'll move on to the next one. It does not interfere with or diminish the value of property in the neighborhood. Well, we've definitely heard from neighbors to the north and to the east that we're concerned about the value of the property, or it would interfere with or diminish the value. I don't know if this is appropriate for he. I don't know if this comment's appropriate for this item here, but the you know, putting a 17-story building, you know, right on top of a historic landmark church just doesn't. It would seem to me that that would have a negative effect on that property. Like I said, I don't know if that's an appropriate comment for this item, but that definitely informs my thinking on this item. It can be adequately served by public facilities and services. I don't think I mean, I don't think there's any evidence that it wouldn't. I would say that this item was satisfied.
Except that we have, you know, from the DAPR meeting, there, you know, there's the condition of the alley. I mean, I'm sure it can be served by the, you know, water and sewer and all of those other things, but, you know, the DAPR, you know, the cost estimate for replacing or improving that alley was $430,000.
But
those minutes.
That's not necessarily. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily put that completely on the applicant, right? If the city wants to do a special assessment and charge all the property owners their share of that because they believe that the alley is not appropriate, or if the if the neighbors that use the alley want to approve that special assessment, that can be done, you know. So like, I don't really see that as an issue. You know, if the alley needs to be redone, then, you know, the neighbors around the alley need to get it done. It does not cause undue traffic congestion. I think this is satisfied. I know there was concern about the use of the alley, but you know, I thought that reducing the number of commercial uses, and therefore the number of, you know, commercial trucks that would be using that alleyway. And I don't think the number of parking spaces would cause too much traffic congestion in the front. Now, I guess there could be an argument that it would cause more cars to be coming back and forth and using the porte cochere. But overall, I didn't think that the proposal would cause undue traffic congestion.
I agree.
I agree.
Preserve significant historical and architectural resources.
Not applicable.
Not applicable. Preserve significant natural and environmental features. Not applicable. Complies with all other applicable regulations of the district in which it is located and other applicable ordinances, except to the extent such regulations have been modified through the plan development process. I don't think there was anything that they were asking for that wasn't, you know, they didn't like bring to light in their application. So I would say that this is satisfied. Let's see. Okay, so we have to, the Plan Commission shall not recommend approval of, nor shall the City Council approve a plan development unless each shall determine, based on written findings of fact, the plan development satisfies the special standards established in the zoning district in which the plan development is located. So we're going to go through those standards now. Each plan development shall be compatible with surrounding, blocked development and not be of such a nature in height, bulk, or scale as to exercise any influence contrary to the purpose and intent of the zoning ordinance as set forth in section 6-1-2. I think this is really what this is the kind of goes to the heart of what we've been talking about here. And, you know, whether the height, bulk, or scale of this development is compatible with the block, with the with the with the Chicago Avenue portion of the block, with the portion to the east, And I know there's some disagreement on that. I would say that it's not satisfied.
I would agree, obviously.
I would agree as well.
All right, number 2, each planned development shall enhance the identity and character of the downtown by preserving where possible character-giving buildings, enhancing existing streetscape amenities, maintaining retail continuity in areas where it is prominent, strengthening pedestrian orientation and scale, and contributing to the mixed-use vitality of the area.
Satisfied.
Yes. Let's see. Yeah. The only thing I would say is that with the retail, you know, and I know that retail is having a significant is going to be having significant issues over the next probably few years because of COVID. But I do get concerned with we'd be removing 4 to 5 retail spaces and probably only having 1 to 2 left. And every time we approve a development, that's what we're doing. We're removing 5 retail and ending up with 1 or 2. So yeah, I agree that it's satisfied. I needed to say that out loud. Each planned development shall be compatible with and implement the adopted comprehensive general plan as amended, a plan for downtown Evanston, any adopted land use or urban design plan specific to the area, this zoning ordinance, and any other pertinent city planning and development policies. I think the big issue that's been raised is that
Plan for downtown.
this plan exceeds what the plan for downtown Evanston has suggested.
So I would say not satisfied.
Yeah, satisfied. Each plan development shall be completed within 2 years of the issuance of the special use permit for the planned development. That is, I don't know how we'd ever say that isn't satisfied, because it's just not applicable, because that's more of a condition for moving forward. All landscaping treatment within the planned development shall be provided in accordance with the requirements set forth in Chapter 17 and shown on the required landscape plan that shall be submitted as part of the planned development application. I'm not sure that we saw anything, but again, I wouldn't say that it's not satisfied. I don't recall the landscaping. Walkways developed for a planned development shall form logical, safe, and convenient system for pedestrian access to all project facilities and off-site destinations likely to attract substantial pedestrian traffic. Pedestrian ways shall not be used by other automotive traffic. I would say that this is satisfied. Location, construction, and operation of parking, loading areas, and service areas shall be designed to avoid adverse effects on residential uses within or adjoining the development, and where possible, provide additional parking beyond that required for the planned development to service the downtown district in which is located. So I'd say that this is a mixed bag, because I think they did a very good job about location and operation of parking and loading areas. As far as providing additional parking beyond that required, I would say that the standard is probably a little bit outdated, because we have been moving towards approving less parking than what is required in downtown districts. Principal vehicular access points shall be designed to permit smooth traffic flow with controlled turning movements and minimum hazards to vehicular or pedestrian traffic. If the planned development employs local streets within the development, said streets shall not be connected to streets outside the development in such a way as to encourage their use by through traffic. I think this is satisfied. I think like I said, I think their parking and vehicular plan was good. The planned development shall provide, if possible, for underground installation of utilities, both in public ways and private extensions thereof. I believe on this project there was underground installation of utilities. I don't believe this was the one where the city didn't, the staff did not ask for that. For every plan development, there shall be provided a market feasibility statement. We have that. For every plan development, there shall be provided a traffic circulation impact study. We have that. And then zoning administrator may, at his discretion, require of the applicant additional studies or impact analyses when he determines, actually she determines, that a reasonable need for such investigation is indicated. I would say that this is satisfied because I don't believe we've heard that the applicant refused to provide anything that the zoning administrator had requested. Okay, with that, I believe we've gone through all the standards. Is there a motion that someone wants to make with respect to 18 PLND-0112 plan development for 1621 Chicago Avenue?
Sure. I'll recommend that that we recommend denial of the proposed plan development because it is not consistent with the underlying zoning requirements, and it's not consistent with the policies and density recommendations of the 2009 plan for downtown Evanston.
Okay, so the motion is to recommend denial. Is there a second to that motion?
Mr. Chairman, if I could just, I'm actually inclined to support the development, provided that the 9 conditions that staff has outlined are included in that approval, and I'd like to add a 10th. And so if the motion is framed as a negative, there's no possibility to.
I see your point. Let's have a motion to approve, and then we'll have motions to amend, and then we'll vote on the motion to approve, and a failure of the motion to approve shall be a denial.
All right, I'll withdraw my motion.
All right. Commissioner Huco, would you like to make a motion to approve the 18 PLND-0112?
Yes, I would like to make that motion, and then I'd like to, once the motion's made, I'd like to offer an amendment.
Understood. Okay, is there a second to Commissioner Huco's motion? I will second. Commissioner Johnson.
You can have it, Chair Isaac.
No, it's all you.
Thank you.
All right, it's been there's a motion, it's been seconded. Are there any amendments to the motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to offer an amendment and ask that the 9 conditions specified in the background material and the recommendation be added as a condition to moving forward. And I'd like to also add a 10th condition dealing with affordable housing. And I'll need your guidance here on whether that should be framed as requiring them to comply with the January 2019 IHO, or whether we just put in a specific number of affordable housing units that would have to be included in the development.
I'm not sure that, and this is why I asked the question at the beginning of our deliberations. I'm not sure that that's necessarily within our purview to be making that a condition. I don't know that we can really get into it. Do we have Scott? Do we have Corporation Counsel on the call with us?
I believe Mr. George is on the call. And then just to add in while he's getting ready, or in previous developments, that yes, the recommendation from the law department's been that inclusionary housing ordinance is not within the purview of the Plan Commission. It's not part of the zoning ordinance. Certainly, you can have discussions about adequacy of public benefits, and that can inform your recommendation on the proposal. But conditions regarding the inclusionary housing ordinance would be under the purview of the city council as they have that under their jurisdiction.
And that would include a general, not referring to the IHO, but just as a general, we'd like to have affordable housing in there. Is there a way that that can be put, or is that condition, or that issue completely off the table for us as a condition, you know?
I agree with what Scott said regarding putting that as a condition. As far as affordable housing, I think that's, I don't have a definitive answer really at this time. That's something I would have to look into. But I would lean, my instinct would be no.
Okay, well, I mean, Commissioner Hugo, there's no, since we don't have a definitive answer, if you'd like to make your motion to amendment, go ahead and make it, and we'll, you know, if someone will second it, we'll have a vote on it.
I'd like to amend, add the 9, and I was trying to find a way to shoehorn affordable housing into this in a way that was legal and within the regulations, but I guess the answer is no. So I guess I would amend it with just the 9 conditions.
Okay. Is there a second to Commissioner Hugo's motion? Commissioner Lindwall, seconds.
I'll second, but I'd also, actually, I would like to add a 10 to the conditions.
All right. Well, hold on. Let's have a vote on Commissioner Hugo's motion, and then you can have one as well.
Okay.
All right. So the motion is to add the 9 recommendations set forth by staff in the packet. Is there discussion on the motion? Okay, hearing none. Ms. Jones, can you call roll for
Excuse me, can I ask, this is the main motion is to approve the project.
No, that's the main motion. Right now, all we're voting on is Commissioner Hugo's amendment to the motion to add the 9 conditions from staff.
Okay.
All right, Ms. Jones?
Commissioner Halleck,
Yes.
Commissioner Hugo,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Linwall,
Yes.
Commissioner Westerberg,
Yes.
Chair Isaac.
Yes. All right, the motion passes. Commissioner Lindwall, do you have a?
Yes, I'd like to add point 10 to the list of, I guess, what is it, conditions or recommendations? And that would be for the applicant to work with the city staff to resolve any potential issues related to left turns into the development and potential conflicts with the Whole Food Drive.
Okay. The Commissioner Lindwall has made a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
All right, Commissioner Hugo gets a second. Any discussion on the motion? All right, then Ms. Jones, you can call roll.
Commissioner Halleck,
No.
Commissioner Hugo,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Linwall,
Yes.
Commissioner Westerberg,
Yes.
Chair Isaac.
Yes. All right, the motion passes. Any other amendments to the motion at hand? Okay, well then we'll any deliberation on the motion? All right, hearing none, we'll move to vote. Just as a reminder, we're voting to approve the plan development with the 9 staff recommendations, and then Commissioner Lindwall's recommendation with respect to left turns. So a vote for yes will be to approve the plan development. A vote no will be to deny the plan development. Ms. Jones, can you call roll, please?
Commissioner Halleck,
No.
Commissioner Hugo,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Linwall,
No.
Commissioner Westerberg,
No.
Chair Isaac.
No.
Hey, Peter.
That motion actually fails. 4-2.
Okay, so the plan commission is going to send a recommendation of denial to the city council for 18 PLND-0112. That concludes our old business. Is there any public comment? Okay, hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
All right, Commissioner Westerberg, second. I will second. We're going to do this by voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, all against? All right, we are adjourned. Thank you all, and see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you, everyone.